Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I will talk about my experience with Google's ecosystem and how it's compared against Apple in 2023. I have a long history with both ecosystems and there are a lot of major changes that took place on both sides that makes this comparison worth revisiting. So without further ado, let's jump in. Let's start with the things that really stand out in Google's ecosystem. Number one is the accessibility of Google apps and services. I do like the idea of having all my devices from the same company to get the most seamless experience, but at the same time, I hate restrictions. I still need all my devices to communicate with each other even if they are not from the same company or running the same operating system. For example, I have the ability to wirelessly transfer files between my Windows PC and my Pixel phone or any other Android phone after the release of Nearby Share for Windows, which is the equivalent to Apple's AirDrop. And that made a huge difference in my experience. I no longer need to use a cable, locate the files, and then transfer them over like before, or use an unofficial app that gives me a chargeable or a half-packed experience. In contrast, AirDrop is only available for Apple devices. So if I have an iPhone and a Windows PC, or if I have a Mac but I prefer to use an Android phone, I'm out of luck. And I have to stick with the wired connections. That's exactly what keeps me away from Apple's ecosystem, the restrictions. Another example is Google Chrome. If I'm signed in with the same Google account on any device, either if it's a Windows, Mac, iOS, or Android, I have the ability to share links between all my devices wirelessly in a couple of seconds. I can access the open tabs on any device and continue from where I left off, no matter which one I'm using. In contrast, there is no Safari on any other OS. Not to mention that all Google's services are accessible everywhere, either through apps or the web, with much more features than Apple. Let's take iCloud Photos and Google Photos as an example. If I have my photos backed up to the cloud and access them through the web, all I can do on iCloud.com is the basic things like add to favorites, delete, download, etc. While Google Photos gives me the same options in addition to most of the editing tools available on my smartphone. Like the AI suggestions, I can crop, rotate, or change the aspect ratio, some useful editing tools like Portrait Light, convert any photo into a portrait, and more. I have all the editing controls you would expect from any gallery app and the same filters available on my phone. I can also download Google Photos on my iOS device and enjoy the same features with the ability to seamlessly back up my photos and videos, same as Apple Photos. So there is no point for me to trap myself in Apple's cloud storage because if I'm using an iPhone and an Android phone at the same time, which a lot of people do, I would be able to have everything synchronized between my phones despite their different operating systems, and if later down the road I decided to switch from Android to iOS or vice versa, it would be much easier for me to take this step if I have a cross-platform solution. There are tons of other examples, but I'm sure you got the idea. Even when Apple decided to give access to other operating systems to certain services like FaceTime, they didn't bother to create an app for it, and they made it only available through the web. In contrast, Google Meet app is available for iOS and Android. RCS messaging will be available on iOS next year after being pushed by the European Union, same as the USB-C, and many more unreasonable restrictions that keeps me away from Apple's world. Unfortunately, Apple is being pushed to do the right thing, which I hoped they did on their own a long time ago, but the support for RCS messaging and USB-C are certainly welcomed because changes like this will free people from the traps built by companies to keep their customers stuck with a certain ecosystem and instead of deciding which one to choose based on their own experience. And I hope to see more in the future. The second reason I prefer Google's ecosystem is the AI-focused software, which Apple lacks big time. Let's start with the latest smartphone from each company to show you some examples. On my Pixel phone, I can use AI to generate wallpapers for my home and lock screens. It gives me 12 different categories to choose from, then an editable command prompt to make it as close as possible to my imagination, and the generated wallpapers are unique, which means no one else will get the same results as yours. And the probabilities are endless. In contrast, the iPhone just offers the preloaded set of wallpapers that Apple changes once a year. In Google Photos, there are even more AI than ever before. Look at Magic Editor and how it can transform your photo into something completely different. I can move things around and generative AI fill in the gaps in a very convincing way. I can erase anything from any photo and it will do the same. in addition to the ability to change the look of the sky and the clouds. Best Take is another feature that combines similar photos and allow you to choose the best face expression for each person in the shot where everyone looks their best. Audio Magic Eraser uses AI to identify different sounds recorded in your video and help you reduce each sound separately to minimize distractions so you can hear the ones you want. None of these features or anything similar are available on the iPhone, but you get the normal iterative features that you can find on any smartphone even before Apple. Like the ability to convert any photo into a portrait, which is something I was able to do on my Pixel phones for more than 5 years using AI. While Apple is only allowing this for the photos taken with the 15 Pro models, which requires depth data to be captured with each photo for the feature to work. Plus, all other AI features Apple added to iOS 17 are only for enhancing whatever features available instead of creating something new. And it doesn't only stop here, but Google's Workspace apps got some useful AI features, like Help Me Write in Gmail that enhances your email typing experience. All you need to do is to briefly explain what you want to say, and it will generate a detailed and professional email message with the ability to reiterate until you get a satisfactory result. In Google Slides, you can use AI to generate photos for your presentations. Google Docs also supports Help Me Write to quickly generate some paragraphs for your document and more. The third reason I prefer Google's ecosystem is the software updates, and there is a fundamental difference between the two. With iPhones, you get most of the new features once a year with every major OS release, while Pixel phones get quarterly feature drops that usually include 2 to 3 big new features per quarter. So you don't need to wait a whole year to enjoy them. Secondly, Google Apps get a massive number of new features every month, which means the core apps like Google Photos, Gboard, Keep Notes, Gmail, YouTube Music, and more are continuously improving and getting new features. This alone feels like a software update, and even if your Pixel phone is old and no longer getting OS updates, you still can enjoy most of the new features Google pushed to core apps without a problem. On top of this, Google surprised us with 7 years of OS updates for the Pixel 8 models, which is even better than the iPhone's 6 years of software support, so I think Google nailed it in this area. The fourth reason is Google products are more affordable. I'm not only talking about the phone, but generally speaking, Chromecast with Google TV is cheaper than Apple TV. The Pixel Buds, the watch, and the other accessories are also cheaper. Some people might argue that Apple products have better quality, which could be right in certain areas and also expected as far as you are paying more, which is something that I'm going to talk about when I reach this point. Now let's talk about the things that Apple does better. Number one, Google is late to the game. For example, the Pixel Watch lineup started last year, while the Apple Watch has 9 generations. Apple released the 10th generation iPad, while the first Pixel tablet just got released this year. Same as Apple TV versus Chromecast with Google TV and more. Which means that Apple dominated the market way before Google, and that makes it hard for users to switch. Secondly, Apple had enough time to refine the products and offer more varieties. For example, there are 5 different Apple Watch models to choose from with different sizes too, versus one Pixel Watch that only has one size. There are 4 different iPad models versus only one tablet from Google. Same as the headphones, 2 models from Google and 5 from Apple. And when it comes to computers, Google is really far behind. There is no Google branded Chromebook, while Apple has 6 different Mac categories and each one has multiple models. The only exception is Google is ahead of Apple in the smart home devices, as you can get a lot more products like the smart displays, Wi-Fi systems, security cameras, doorbells, thermostats, and more. But from an end user perspective, it's far more important to get more computers, watches, and headphones than smart home devices. The second reason Apple is better is the presence in way more markets around the world, which makes it easier for a lot of people to choose Apple over Google, especially in the MENA region. For example, I live in the UAE and there is no official Google store or authorized reseller in the region, which makes it hard for me to get my hands on a Pixel phone. I'm not able to claim my warranty if I need to, and I pay more than the official price. Third, Apple uses more powerful and efficient chipsets across all devices, either if it's the watch, the iPad, the iPhone, or Mac computers. They are not only better in performance, but the battery life of Apple devices is noticeably better. Lastly, the apps quality. Starting with the social media or video calling apps, most of the time the in-app camera quality is better on iPhones. Some apps and games give more features to iPhone users, and there are a lot of examples. So far, my thoughts suggests that Google's ecosystem has a better software experience, while most of Apple's advantages are related to the hardware. But does it mean that my experience with Google's hardware is bad? Absolutely not, especially in 2023. Starting with the Pixel 8 Pro, which is my daily driver, I'm really impressed by the improvements Google made over the 7 Pro of last year. I'm getting a much better performance and thermal management, the upgraded rear cameras, and the ability to shoot 50 megapixel photos across all lenses is the best thing Google added to this phone. It takes extremely detailed photos with impressive HDR under all conditions, which no other phone can beat. The video recording also got a massive improvement even before the release of Video Boost expected later this year. It was able to beat the 15 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra in certain situations, and if it couldn't, the differences were not massive. The display is insanely bright and it sustains this brightness for a long time, even longer than the 15 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra, which is something I talked about in my 8 Pro review. Overall, my experience is great, but you will certainly see some areas where Google lags behind, like the battery life. I do get a reasonable battery life overall and I can make it through the day without a problem, but the 15 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra are noticeably better. The unlocking experience is good enough, but not as great as Apple's Face Unlock, and the same applies to the speakers. I still prefer the 15 Pro Max's speaker over the 8 Pro. But if we're gonna talk about the whole package in relation to the price, it's a great value for money. Moving to the Pixel Watch 2, I think Google should make a bigger size and an A-series model to give people more options. Also, the speaker has to be improved as it sounds tinny with a lot of distortion, same as the first Pixel Watch. But beside this, it delivers an overall good experience in my opinion. I love how great is Google Assistant on this watch. I always use it to control my home devices and it never let me down. The display is bright under direct sunlight. The digital crown is noticeably faster and more responsive than the one used in its predecessor. I also noticed that the haptics are much stronger than before, and the most important thing is the new chip. It made the watch faster and more responsive while delivering a battery life of slightly more than a day with always on display and race to wake activated. Google is also giving a lot of attention to Wear OS. I see more apps making their way to the watch, like Gmail, Google Calendar, and WhatsApp. Google added the ability to back up the watch to the cloud, transfer it from one phone to another without a factory reset, and some other quality of life features like syncing the alarms and do not disturb between the phone and the watch, and more. Talking about the Pixel Buds Pro, I've been using it for 3 weeks now and I didn't expect it to be that good, especially the battery life. My original Pixel Buds had poor battery life and connectivity issues, but the new model is miles ahead. The connection is very stable and I never heard the low battery notification once, even when I used it for a very long time with active noise cancellation, which was exactly the opposite with the previous model that doesn't even have ANC. Not to mention that I charge it a lot less frequently. But what made me decide to upgrade to the Pro model is the new software features Google added. The conversation detection is such an amazing feature to have, especially with the ANC. I found it to be responsive and smart enough to rely on in my day-to-day usage. The second one is the better phone calls quality after the addition of the super wideband Bluetooth connection. No one ever complained about my voice after upgrading to the Pro model, and all agreed that they can hear me clearly. The sound quality is also much better, and the addition of a 5-band equalizer made it much easier for me to adjust the sound the way I want. When it comes to the ANC performance, I would give it 7 out of 10. It does block a lot of the ambient noise, but I still can hear some of it, especially if there are people talking in the same room. And that's the only thing I would like to see improved in the future. Lastly, my Google Home devices are always great. I don't have any complaints in this area. My Nest Home Mini looks elegant, I never had a problem with it, and it delivers a great sound quality considering how small is the size. Same as my Chromecast with Google TV. It's a small device that always fits and easy to travel with. It has a great performance and very reliable. So overall, Google's hardware had a lot of issues in the past, but this year I would say I'm happy to stick with Google's ecosystem than ever before, as I can see much bigger improvements year over year, and all they need to do is to refine things rather than fixing them like before. So these are the pros and cons I see in each ecosystem. Some of them didn't change for a long time, but we certainly have some major changes on both sides. These changes will certainly have an impact on the long run, but as we speak, I think Google's ecosystem delivers the best software experience, while Apple is the best in hardware, but Google is closer than ever before. So that's pretty much it for today. That was my comparison between Google's and Apple's ecosystems in 2023. Please let me know in the comments what do you think. But for now, thanks so much for watching and see you in the next video.